Good evening, boys and girls. How are we all doing today? Yeah. That's basically life, isn't it? That's uh, yeah. Oh, excuse me. Is doing something really weird. Give me 1 second. And then room tab testing. Testing. Okay, we're good. So, as it says in the title, we are I have not actually seen any of this. So I don't know any of what Apple has announced today. So this will be fun. uh, but but we will start. So essentially, what I'll do is, since I can't just restream it on here, right? So what I'll do is I'll. Oh, hi, Brett. Good night, Brett. What I'll do is I will play it on my iPad, and presumably, like as Apple is wont to do, they'll have a whole bunch of like useless things in the middle, and we'll just fast forward those. Um, so I've already watched, or not watched, but I've fast forwarded through the first 6 minutes. So we're starting at 6 minutes in, and just one minor comment before we start with the tech stuff. I like the idea of live sports. Yes, we've heard rumors about live sports. That has definitely been a thing. Um, I just don't know if baseball is the sport. Yes, well, so the thing is, baseball has been has ha, well, what is new, Brett? That is and no, I got distracted. It's been a long day. So baseball, personally, we've seen sort of the numbers for baseball starting to slide, right? Like at least as far as I'm aware, the numbers for baseball have actually been pretty bad. So that's not to say that baseball ball is not a thing. It's just that baseball is probably the least interesting of for Apple's um more hipsterish a more hipsterish clientele. And also, Brett, this isn't the first time. You just didn't see it when I did the last 4 or 5 times, because I only usually do these when the big tech companies actually have these live events, right? And I remember skewering Google and Samsung last time. Anyway, so baseball, cool. We're starting the press conference at 6 minutes. Um, oh, actually, for reference, I'm playing this off the Apple website. I don't know if you're following along on Google on YouTube what that would be, but our boy Tim had just gotten into the iPhone. So let's see. Oh, actually, yes. Before I forget, yeah. Good night, Brett. Before I forget, what was I going to say? Oh, right. What we expect. So we expect a couple of things that we might expect. We might expect a big monitor, or not big, but a new monitor. We might expect a more powerful Mac of some sort. I think they've retracted the iPad, MacBook Air, and MacBook Pros, the new ones with M2 chips, so those are off the table. We expect a new iPhone, or no, not a new iPhone. We expect the iPhone SE upgraded with the A15 chip, and we expect the iPad Air upgraded with probably the M1 chip. So that's what we're looking at for. Okay, 6 minutes. Let's go. All right. forgetting Tim Cook's folksy accent. It's fantastic. Do I like my iPhone? I do like my iPhone. Two gorgeous new fin. Oh my god, really? Oh, I guess they have to show us the colors, don't they? Yes. Of course they do. So green, nice. So what, like essentially we're gonna all have like Hulk version iPhones. Yes, yes. Jungle, my bad. I'm sorry. Mm, I don't like those colors. Those, I, I'm not. No, I'm not a fan of those green. Those greens. No, that's not Alpine green. That's definitely not Alpine green. Well, yeah. So like new colors aren't that hard, right? Like as long as you have the supply chain and the factories in place, it's easy. Apple Silicon. Are they doing the M2? It doesn't look like it. Oh, okay, yeah. So A15. Oh, if he's talking about A15, then this is probably going to be the iPhone SE. Let's take a look. Well, I mean, I say let's take a look, but Tim Cook is of course talking. There's no reason why I'm not allowed to talk over Tim Cook. What? Just because he's a tech executive, that means he has the right to say whatever he wants, and everyone else has to shut up. Okay, to be fair, to be fair, yes, I am. Like, see, new iPhone SE. Yeah, got it. Can we just fast forward this part? This is not important. You didn't design iPhone SE. Literally, the iPhone SE was designed by what? Like, actually the original. No, no, no. Yeah, 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 yeah. Was Jony Ive? I was gonna say it was the original design was by Steve Jobs, but that's obviously not true because he died when the iPhone 4 came out. New users. This doesn't. Can we fast forward this? Oh wow! Thank you for telling me about a design that's literally a decade old by this point, right? Like, because this was originally the design of the iPhone 6. So there's very little difference between this phone and the iPhone 6. And we're on the iPhone 14 this year, right? Actually, 14.6. So it was like almost 12 years ago. It's ridiculous. They should have, honestly, if I'm honest, they should have kept the SE on the old iPhone 5 look. Oh, that's fantastic. I'm gonna fast forward, just because we already know what the A15 is like, because it's literally been out for half a year. So I'm just gonna fast forward until they're done talking. They're talking about for computational photography or whatever, not computational, doesn't matter. Okay, we're at we're getting to the iPad. Oh, that's okay. So exactly as we predicted, right? Oh, right. I'm at 1448, and I'm just gonna start playing it from here. iPad, of course, yes, the iPad Air. Oops, sorry about that. The old iPad 4, the iPad Air was actually fantastic because it really did use, it was old, but it was still sort of like it had the modern iPad Pro look. Yeah, and it had the iPad Pro look. but it was slightly lower than the iPad Pro 11-inch, right? But see, he's saying taking the performance to the next level, which means that they're probably putting an M1 chip in there. And so then what is the difference between the iPad Air, whatever, 5 and the iPad Pro, right? Like there is no more difference because they both use the same pen, they both use the same silicon, they both use well, I mean presumably the screen is a little bit better on the iPad Pro, but would you really like who would pay hundreds of dollars more for something that has slightly better screen and was no better in any other way, right? The this really is a case of if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? Because there's literally no change to the chassis of this iPad Air. Okay, I guess we're fast forwarding this as well. We knew exactly what was going to happen. And the M1 has been out since late 2020, so we literally are not seeing anything else. They're probably going to position it as a laptop replacement, like with the iPad Pros, connectivity. Oh, is this? Let me check. Is this? Well, it's got the M1, so presumably this is Thunderbolt. Okay, 5G. Okay. Oh yeah, and it's obviously it's compatible with the keyboards, but it was always compatible with the keyboards. Um, that's that. That's that. I'm fast forwarding. I'm now at like 21 minutes. Oh, silly little videos that don't really show anything. iPad Air from $599. So I think that's the same price as it currently is, right? Anyway, so Tim's back. 2330. Okay, we're talking about the M1. Excellent. Well, that's the beauty about the M1 chip, right? Like even essentially 2 years later, as Tim is now saying, they've done that transition fairly well. And the Pro and the Max have been fantastic simply because the SoC is the the way that they designed the substrate. So everything that all those little neural engines, like efficiency cores, graphics cores, the way they designed those made it extremely scalable. So you could imagine like the Pro and the Max were simply just extra GPUs bolted on top of the M1. And remember what I said in 2020. I said this in 2020. You guys can go back and look it up. That there's a very high chance of Apple simply bolting on additional graphics units. And that's exactly what they did with the Pro and the Max, right? So outpace the industry. Good. You know what the turn is though, right? Like the current turn in the semiconductor business is moving away from single monolithic chips, like one gigantic chip like the M1 Max, to um, chiplets. And so that means like little chips that might not do exactly the same thing that are then connected together by some sort of fabric. Oh, more extreme. So it's not the M2 then, is it? What are they gonna call it? Oh, Ultra. Okay. All right. Ultra. Yeah, so what chiplets are, that's a good question. Chiplets are, um, think of it like, so the M1 Max is essentially the largest that really we can make a proper chip. Larger than that and yield is just too much of a problem. And so if you can imagine making multiple smaller chips and combining them together. And exactly. And so by having essentially all of those chips being smaller, you can have much higher throughput and viability. Apple Silicon even further. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Are they? Oh my god. They're just gonna connect to M1 Maxes. Shit. They are, aren't they? Don't spoil it for me. Don't spoil it for me. Um, I want to see this. They're gonna start with M1. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're gonna stack two of these bad boys together, probably with a Apple custom interposer between them. Oh, and that means much higher memory throughput. They're gonna put HBM on this thing. They're gonna HBM is a stacked memory through in silico VS, and that makes like gigantic. Oh, see, interconnect. There we go. See. Ah, fucking called it. Called it. Well, it's true. This is exactly what it's supposed to be, right? Like if you need more performance but you don't have the yield for it, then you just connect two of them together. So I mean it makes sense. We talked about chiplets before this. Ooh, that's pretty fast. I wonder how they did this while keeping energy down. Because the biggest problem, as he's just said, is the energy consumption of it all, right? It is a single chip. Un- and see, so when he says unified memory, that's definitely HBM. Presumably, they're going to stack it. That's fantastic, man. Oh my god. Oh, there are those the HBM chip? Yeah, that's the memory. Ooh, 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 that's dirty. Oh, see, called it. That's dirty. Can you imagine? And that's all. I'm gonna pause here for a second. And the point there is right. Like Apple has already always gone for wide over speed. So all of Apple's execution units, whether that's in graphics or in their high performance efficiency cores, all of it has always been about doing as much in parallel as possible. So it's just if you have that much memory throughput on top of all of that, oh, that's disgusting. I'm at 2909, so let's continue with this. Oh, that's dirty. Oh my god. Well, it is because it is just two M1 Maxes on top of each other. Well, not on top, like beside each other. Oh, remember what we were saying, right? The benchmarks. I'm pausing it again at 2929. The benchmarks for M1 Max, which is just half of this Ultra chip, was comparative to last year's i9 chip, and the graphics were comparative to what I think it was a 3060 from Nvidia. Coincidentally, poor Nvidia for getting hacked and like getting all this shit leaked. That's that's harsh, and Samsung as well as actually. But that is the world we live in right now, right? Yeah, the world is yeah. Anyway, what was I saying? Right. So remember that just half of this ultra chip is already basically a moderately powerful gaming, or not even moderately, upper middle tier gaming CPU from last year. So two of these bad boys with much faster memory throughput. Oh, that's fantastic. It's too bad Intel couldn't do this, because then we can have a Windows machine that runs this, right? Can you imagine if we could run Windows? Well, not Windows 11 because fuck Microsoft, but like Windows 10 on this. You could play is every any game you can put your mind to. And presumably this will sell the Ultra. Well, anything with Ultra in it will like will sell for about $3,000, right? Like that's my guess. So $3,000 if you want the latest NVIDIA chip and then the latest i9 on top of that and everything, all the other peripherals to get you a fully built computer, you cannot get that for $3,000, right? Like a single 3090 is probably gonna set you back $3,000. Uh, See that highest end discrete GPU. So they're trying to compare it to probably a 3090, and that's ridiculous. Did you see that power difference? I mean, obviously these are optimal situations comparing, but even so, at steady state, you wouldn't expect the M1 Ultra to get even nearly as hot, right? Uh, Tightly integrated. So they're going to tell us what M1 Ultra is going to be in. Obviously, it's going to be desktop class since he, what's his face, already told us it was going to be desktop. Industry leading security. It's okay. It's just I've talked basically all of today. It's basically my life these days, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, can I fast forward this? I'm gonna fast forward this. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, cause it's March the 8th, right? That's why all of these creators are women. That's good. Fantastic. More. Oh. Okay, we're getting to the Mac announcement. You know what? I'm guessing they're going to keep iMac and Mac Mini on the M1, and they're going to build something else that takes the M1 Ultra and probably the M1 Max. Like they don't need the M1 Pro on a desktop grade because that there's no scalability there. But an M1 Max that would work. Modularity. So it's not going to be a iMac like thing anymore. So they're not building the computer into the screen. They're gonna give us a screen and a little Yep. Because when he's a modular, right, that means he's not. They're not giving you a one size fits all thing. Oh, videos again. I'm gonna fast forward this. 3644. Yeah, Mac Studio. That sounds cute, but that is a little tall, isn't it? Studio display. If they've made that display, then that display definitely has webcam in it, and probably an let's say A13, A12 chip inside, just to make sure that the camera, and they probably have speakers built in, so to run the speakers and the camera. That's Mac Studio breakthrough. You could have just made the Mac Mini a little bit taller. That's literally all it is. She looks like she's really into the Mac Studio. Can you imagine if Joni Ive designed something like this? Oh my god. Joni's probably turning. Oh, he's not dead, but Joni's probably looking at this brick and going, "Oh my god, why did you fire me?" That's pretty small though. That's very nice. I actually, hmm, are those the fans on top? Those those are fans. Wow. Okay, so it sucks in air from the bottom and okay. Ah, okay, okay. So that goes out the back. Hmm. So you need to know how to place it. Well, that's because the M1 chips were like smartphone chips first. Well, no, the cores were designed for low power first, right? And that's fantastic. Like that's something that Qualcomm and Intel are both doing right now, or trying to. Four, nice. Yeah, they definitely needed to go for the 10 gigabit. Can you imagine putting a 1 gigabit thing on here and people would give them so much shit for it. Wow. Two USB ports. 10 gigabits. So that's what? That's USB 3.2. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, because in the M1 Ultra you have more Thunderbolt for PCI Express lanes, so you can actually use those extra lanes for the for Thunderbolt 4. That's pretty sick. I'll be honest, that monitor looks pretty sweet. Okay. I feel like they're not going to tell me much more. There's only how much? There's only 18 minutes left, so look at her standing with her feet so wide apart and then like moving her arms like that. She's desperately trying to be a tech executive. And she is, but like I don't know. It just feels a little bit. It feels like she's trying to be one of the boys when she definitely has her own her like she's not being herself, if that makes sense. That's pretty. Well, I mean, to be fair, that iMac is also like 2.5 years old now. You can't. Okay, so those benchmarks are. I'm gonna turn down the volume and just let her talk. But um, the the problem with benchmarks like that, yes, Apple's benchmarking itself, and that is usually good, right? Because you're talking to people who are upgrading, but other people will look at that and go, "Oh wow, 16 core Xeon. I know those are enterprise class chips. So, and the Max Studio is fantastically fast. But like, but that's not a Xeon from like, last year. That's a Xeon from like 3 years ago, right? So it's it's a little bit duplicitous if you try to take them at the worst. If you just be kind to Apple and say that they're comparing it to themselves and asking people to upgrade, then yeah, I think this makes sense. Yeah. Well, it's true, right? It depends. It depends on whether you're a fanboy or not. Oh yeah, she's gonna say 128. Well, that's the max. We're talking about the Ultra. There you go, 128. But of course, that's not true either, right? Like that comparison is also not true. You're comparing graphics memory to unified memory. And yes, theoretically, you could put 128 gigabytes of graphics data into the unified memory, but then you don't have any more memory for to run the system and for your CPU. So realistically, you're never going to hit that 128. That's not to say that you won't get more than what was it 48 that she claimed earlier. You probably will, but it's certainly not going to be 128. That's pretty sick. That's pretty sick. That 18 streams of 8K, yeah. Especially at 422, right? 422 is the color space that they use, and it's sort of the professional standard. I feel like I've seen her movements before. I can't tell from where. It feels like a movie portrayal of like a douchebag tech executive. And that's why I feel bad for her, right? Because I don't think that's her. Anyway, transform the studio. Oh, okay. We're going to see examples of this. So I'm gonna start fast forwarding again. There we go. Music, animation, more music, photo editing, 3D modeling, video. You're talking about that you're good for the environment. It's where am I? I'm at 4630, and they're talking about that the M1 whatever Mac Studio uses 1,000 kWh less energy than a high-end PC desktop, and they are right. That is true. That part there is no arguing. You cannot possibly argue against that. The chips are simply that much more efficient at the same theoretical performance output, right? And that's, I mean, yeah, that's there. There's no way to get around that. I'm starting at 4635. Uh, wow, recycle tin. They're gonna show us the monitor next, right? Yeah, breathtaking performance. Mm. Yeah, we're gonna see the studio display now. That display is very beautiful. I can't lie about that. No, but that display looks like it's gonna cost 1,500, give or take. Well, because the last Pro Display XDR, whatever that Apple made, was like $3,000 $4,000, right? So, well, I mean, so what you're seeing is there is no 27-inch iMac, right? They literally just said like the people want modular, and so they're not going to make a 27-inch iMac. Instead, it's a 27-inch monitor with the Mac Studio, right? And I think that makes sense, right? Because one of these um, Mac Studios can drive multiple of these monitors, so you don't want to plug a studio chip into the monitor and then sell monitors separately. It just doesn't make that much sense because you want the modularity, blah blah blah. 14.7. Note that in the Mac Studio it said that it could drive, yes, 5K, whatever, not important. The oh, what did I say? It said it could drive up to 90 million pixels, right? So you could drive like five of these. True Tone. So True Tone, that means it must have a camera. So I was right about the camera. Um, it probably then also has speakers, and then they're gonna plug in A12 in there. A12, maybe A13. Definitely not 14 or 15. Definitely on. Maybe A10. No, A10 is probably too long ago. Because A12, like you have the fab still working on it on that size, but like for A13, okay, camera and audio. So literally everything I said came true. Fantastic. Can you imagine if I were an analyst? Oh my god. Center stage, right? Because it's the same. It's probably the same webcam as, yeah. Right, I forgot about microphones, but yeah, if they're gonna have speakers, they're gonna have microphones. Whatever. Not important. There you go. You see those two, and then the purple are the subwoofers. Yep. Oh no, those are the tweeters. Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah. Crisp highs. Oh, spatial audio too. Spatial audio. See, nice. But spatial audio really isn't. I don't know. Maybe spatial audio, but like, if you're going to be into spatial audio, you're going to have your own Dolby setup. I, though I suppose you could, right? Like, what if you just bought one of these and used it as a TV? You could, maybe. No, so you do need a Thunderbolt input. Yeah. See? Yeah. Why would you need to connect networking into the display? Oh, no, no, no. This isn't. What am I saying? Of course, this isn't designed simply for the Mac Studio. See, it's designed for the MacBook. There we go. Right. So once you plug it in, you can charge any Mac notebook, and you can have Ethernet cables stuck to the back. Oh, up to 3. Okay. I think I claimed 4 or 5 earlier, but yeah, 3. Fine. Wow. They added some new color options for mouse. I'm going to start fast forwarding again. Um, so yeah, lovely. And then there's the final. Oh wow, you plugged in a camera. Oh right, pricing. Okay, I'm at 54.39. Let's look at the pricing. So I said the early on. I said one of these desktop class computers with the Ultra would be around 3 grand, right? 3 grand, 3 grand. Yes, 3 grand. And the display I said was going to be 1500, right? So let's see. That's M1 Max, 1999. Oh, 4 grand. My bad. Wow. Okay, that's a lot more. That's 25% more than I had bargained for. Okay, I can see that for a professional studio, but now you're completely out of the enthusiasts range, right? Like at 3,000, at 3 grand, I could see enthusiasts getting the Max Studio with the Ultra, like the lower version of the Ultra, because obviously they have two, maybe three versions, right? Because it says what does it say? 64 gigabytes and 1 terabyte is 39.99. So presumably, if you bring it up to the full 128 and you add some, if you just bring it up to the full 128 gigabytes, you're probably sitting at 59.99, something along those lines, and that's steep, right? So eh, yeah, so then the Mac Studio with M1 Max was what, 1,999, I think. Let me just go back and double check. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Yeah, with M1 Max, 32 gigabytes of memory. Yeah, so that's I can imagine that. Like I would pick one of those up. Probably. But definitely not at 4 grand for the Ultra Studio Display. Let's see. 15.99, so $100 off. That's not bad. That's not bad. Like that I think is, oh, March 18th. Okay. They're done, right? Yeah, so I think I don't think the M1 Ultra needed to cost that much. I think that is a tax. At 1999, yes, there's a little bit of a tax for the M1 Max, but at 39.99, that is a little bit steeper than I imagined. What about the Mac Pro? Ah, that is for another day. Okay, all right. So this is it. Um, yeah. So in conclusion, then, Tim Cook doesn't matter. We're not gonna even listen to Tim Cook. He's not gonna say anything interesting. So, yeah. Let's see. In conclusion, basically what we expected. Um, the M1, what was it, Ultra, is a little bit steeper than I thought. Because, well, so you have to imagine it this way, right? The M1 Max at the base configuration that they sell is probably a cut down M1 Max, so it probably doesn't have the full graphics cores, just like they did for the laptops. Um, but you're essentially doubling the price for doubling the chips, right? But that's not strictly how that works, right? That would imply that the rest of the computer itself is, how do we say, like worthless, right? And while some people might might make that claim that Apple computers are worthless, um, I don't think that's strictly true. Well, I know that's not true. Like the chip doesn't cost Apple twice as much. Even the interposer or the interconnect that they designed from the ground up doesn't, like they said it was low latency and blah blah, so that means there's some very interesting things going on there, and they have to recoup their research and development costs. But it's not. It can't possibly be that much, right? Like obviously Apple. It but then again, if it's squarely aimed at studios and these are businesses, and you obviously you charge businesses a lot more than you charge consumers, so I don't know. That's fine. It's just a shame, right? Like I wish if, oh, okay, I'll put it this way. If it were 29.99, I might have considered picking one up. Right? Like absolutely. I probably would have just like logged off right now and bought one. But at 39.99, that is just a hard no. Well, okay, I appreciate that it's basically one person's, you know. But still, right? Like it's simply not, it's not about whether I can afford it or not. It's about whether I should be encouraged, I should be using my money to encourage this kind of behavior. And no, the answer is no, right? Obviously, I don't want to encourage Microsoft anymore, so I'm probably never going to buy another just a regular computer unless it's for a Linux box. But that's a whole other story, right? Like in terms of, at least, yeah, between the M1 Ultra and the M1 Max, if I were to buy a Studio now, I would just go for the Max one and probably the lowest configuration. Just because it's, well, I mean, it obviously it fits my needs, but also I want to encourage Apple's silicon design, because that interconnect is probably one of the most exciting things that came out of today, right? And they didn't spend a lot of time on it, but remember, during this we had talked about the move away from monolithic chips to chiplets. And the fact that Apple made that interconnect essentially means that there will come a future where, in perhaps 1 or 2 years down the line, maybe even 3 years down the line, where the next M chip may be a whole bunch of different chiplets. It might be a chiplet for the efficiency cores. chiplet for the performance cores, chiplet for the GPUs, chiplet for the memories, and then a chiplet for the ancillaries like the graphics, not graphics, the hardware encoder decoders, the sound, the T2. And what that means is you can put each of those chips on a different fab. And that is such a fantastic thing because suddenly your costs are going to drop dramatically, right? Because there are some things that you really do not need, um, like the latest TSMC 5 nanometer plus plus whatever fab that this is going on to right now. Like for example, the video encode decode, right? Like that could be done in massive amounts on a single assembly line just day in and day out, and it could go on all of the iPhones, it could go on all of the iPads, it could go on all of the future M chips. And if you have that interconnect, that means very much so that you can just run massive amounts of these cores, right? You can run just like you have one assembly, one production line simply for the efficiency cores, one assembly line in Taiwan simply for the performance cores, one assembly line for the graphics cores, and then it becomes a puzzle. Exactly, right? It becomes a puzzle, and suddenly you can configure. Can you imagine? Well, obviously it's probably not for the end user, but you can imagine a day in the future where Apple is like, you know what? We're gonna have, we're gonna have three of these, four of those, and six of those, and we're gonna put them all together on top of this fabric and see what it looks like. Fantastic! I would love that. Oh my god. Well, it is a cost issue, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like absolutely, because think of it this way. I had just talked about how the M1 Max, the base configuration of the M1 Max, is cut down on GPUs, right? And that's because there's a yield issue when you make a monolithic chip that big. Because no matter how good you process, you will never get 100% app guaranteed, right? So those M1 Max chips, with how much room that they have to dedicate to the graphics, will simply have bad graphics units, right? Like those chips will have bad graphics units, and then they go to like once TSMC makes them, they go to China where they're verified and then packaged, and then they have to be sold as cut down M1 Max chips, which is in this case what, like 10 cores, and then I think it was 20 graphics cores instead of 32, right? So they essentially disable some of those graphics units and sell them as cut down M1 Max chips. And by doing that, of course, not only is your yield bad, but also your the efficiency for using money is bad, right? Now imagine an alternative where you have just simply all of it being GPUs, and then you cut them down to the proper size. And so what you can then do is each wafer that comes out, you find out where it's bad, and you simply don't use, you know, a few of the GPUs where it's bad. You don't have to then cut down uh, the selling price of your M1 Max chip. Exactly, exactly. And that means you can fit a whole bunch of efficiency cores on one wafer. And exactly, yeah, 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 yeah. You got it. That's it. That's it. That's all there is to it. Well, how do I say this? No, I just it's efficiency, right? Like it's efficiency. The question was, am I getting off on this? No, of course I'm not. Um, but I've talked about this in the past. I've always been a fan of highly efficient supply chains. And obviously, Apple's supply chains are very efficient. But in terms of microchip fabrication, really the entire industry is only now starting to move towards chiplets, in part because interconnects like that, if the fundamental fabric underneath chiplets was so difficult to make. I think you'll remember it, or maybe you won't, but none of you will. What was it? 2, 3 years ago? 3, 4 years ago, Intel introduced a Intel chip on its own fabric. I can't remember what it's called, not important, but it had an AMD graphics card on it. And that was very, very obviously introduced for Apple, and Apple never used it. Well, because Apple and Nvidia have, I don't know, some beef in their history. But the point is, it was tried in the past and never worked. And part of the reason why it never worked was because Intel wasn't very good, or Intel was resting on its laurels, right? That's essentially the that point. Yeah. um, I think 5 years. The question was, when will we see chiplets properly and everything? I want to be optimistic and say 5 years. Well, in part because the guys that developed um, a few of the guys that were integral to the M1 have now been bought out by Qualcomm. So Qualcomm now has some of that same expertise that Apple had when they made M1, and so you'll start seeing Qualcomm chips starting to to probably go wider and a little bit slower in its architecture, but also like presumably now that Apple's done this, you're going to see Intel put a lot more money into its own fabric. AMD is going to put a lot more money. Actually, didn't AMD talk about its new fabric just a few days ago? AMD Interconnect Infinity Architecture, or 110 gigabytes per second. No, that's DRAM. Let's see. I don't know. I'll have to look more into this. It's gonna take more than the time we have left. So yeah, I think 5 years is probably a good time for a lot of these things to come to fruition. But that's it. Yeah. Any other questions? Will I buy? I honestly, I'm kind of tempted. um. So yeah, I am, because I mean I'm going to I do use Macs occasionally, right? So um no, I don't think I'll ever use a laptop outside of the office. Or no, let me rephrase that. I won't go out into society with a laptop again. I don't think so. I Either notebook or an iPad mini, right? Like that's much more likely what I'll use. Um just simply because everything is everything I need from a tablet is, or rather everything I need from a laptop is mostly not power. It's mostly the ability to write wherever I want, to check up on reading, respond to emails from very, very, very stupid people. I kid. Um, yeah, no. The idea is, if I need something mobile, I'll probably use a tablet, or just use my notebooks. So yeah, I mean, obviously the price performance ratio will always skew towards the desktops, because desktops by definition have more thermal headroom. You saw those fans on that Mac Studio, right? So yeah, because they have thermal headroom, that means the same chip can run a lot hotter, or can run a lot faster, because there's more air taking the heat away, right? So yeah, yeah, like obvious no, obviously Apple has designed their laptops to function properly. They have their own heat dissipation, but like your laptop components are beside the lithium ion batteries, and those same batteries need to feed a screen, And obviously, Apple put very good screens on top of things. And so it's, how do I say? It's simply not interesting to, or no, there's very limited headroom for a laptop to really go really hard on the cooling. Like at some point, you're better off simply just buying two separate things, right? Like if you want a gaming laptop, well, why? That's not to say that you can't. It's most gaming laptops are put on a desk and then never moved again, right? So if you're going to do that with your gaming laptop, then why not simply buy a desktop for cheaper? Oh, well, okay, I know you have the money. That's not obviously, yes, yes. Gaming laptops are for people with more money than sense. Yes, absolutely. Well, okay, no, I can think of a few reasons for people that travel a lot. That perhaps like they travel a lot, but they also sit around a lot. So, for example, business people ish, graduate students. Um, yeah, yeah, I would say those people definitely, sure. But for the vast majority of people who buy gaming laptops, it doesn't go anywhere. Buy yourself, like, come talk to me. I will. Here, here's what we'll do. If you find yourself in desire of a gaming laptop, come to me. I'll build you a gaming desktop that looks nice, and you can pay me the difference. How about that? You can you can pay me the difference. Well, if you have a tablet, you can actually use Steam Link, right? Steam Link is now on everything, except for Chromecast. I'm sure someone's got Steam Link to work on Chromecast. So if you have Steam can even run games that are not part of Steam, right? So like you can literally use a Steam, like pull up your desktop somewhere and then get an ultra light laptop that you can actually take around and not kill yourself with. I think Acer has those like very thin 17-inch laptops. Do that. Why not? You have presumably you have Wi-Fi at home. Presumably you have like even if we have to upgrade your router just to make sure that you have the proper multi in multi out bandwidth to make use of it, it's still cheaper than buying a gaming laptop. Anyway, I'm just ranting now. So thank you very much for watching. Final questions. Yes, yes. That is actually a good question. So the question was, do I see uh more and more ARM in the future? Given that Apple is now all in on ARM. Just background. So right now, most of the for a while, Apple was running Intel chips, and that meant that there was interoperability between Apple laptops, Apple computers, and Windows computers, and Linux computers, etc. And so that's why there was a glorious period of 10, 15 years from the transition of the PowerPC to when we start with the M1s, where basically the only architecture that existed in the world of computers, not phones, because phones were on ARM the entire time, for computers was x86 underscore 64. There are a whole bunch of others, but those are more like server related and not really interesting. X86 was x86 underscore 64, so 64-bit. um those were really like, because they were interoperable, that meant people needed only to target one single chipset for developing their software, and that made it really easy to then translate Windows, programs back onto Mac, blah blah blah. um but obviously now that there's a divergence, that makes it a little bit harder. Having said that, given how powerful these M1 chips are, and remember, right, like when the M1 first came out in 2020, which is 2 years ago, even in emulation, it was working faster than comparatively priced Windows laptops. And so and so that really tells you the difference, right? And but the more fundamental question is, will we start seeing people write native code for ARM more? And I think so, in part also because Microsoft is now moving to Microsoft has that deal with Qualcomm, right, where they're continuously failing at making a I don't know if you guys remember the Surface X. Um, Essentially, they're continuously failing at making a proper ARM based Windows laptop that can compete with like the MacBook Air. So, and of course, Intel is now desperate ish. Intel has become has made its case as a contract manufacturer, just like TSMC. And so, actually, going back to an earlier topic, with Intel throwing its hat into the contract manufacturing race, that makes the case for chiplets so much better, right? We have Global Foundries, we have Samsung, we have um, at TSMC. Global Foundries is the one is are the foundries that spun out of AMD when AMD went fabless, which actually I think was a good choice. But we'll talk about that another day. So when Global Foundries, Samsung, TSMC, Intel, and some like second rate ones. Even technically, Global Foundries is second rate. Um, but that means you can put different chiplets on different places, and suddenly you can cut down on costs, right? Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yes, move to ARM. For the foreseeable future, we won't. At least for video games, right? Because until so this is the good thing about video game engines, about companies like Epic, and that's obviously not a very popular BSC, not a popular opinion. Um, Companies like Epic are actually like if your middleware is good at targeting different architectures, then that means it's much easier to translate games from one architecture to another. So when we see Fortnite coming to M1 based Apple platforms, that are native to ARM, then we'll start seeing a lot of that shift or that multi-targeting of code, because suddenly it makes it a lot easier. Unfortunately, of course, Epic versus Apple is a thing. We have literally talked about the lawsuits. We have gone over their decks. So we shall see, right? Anyway, yeah. We're already at the hour mark. You guys owe me more money. Thank you very much for watching. In conclusion, please download Firefox, please don't do Chrome, and I shall see all of you tomorrow for who knows. We'll see tomorrow. Bye now.